Mentality podcast series. And tonight we are starting the series off with the right way, with none other than Demian Gover as our guest.
Greetings.
Hey Demian, how you doing tonight?
It is a wonderful night. It's a pleasure to be speaking with you.
Yeah, I mean we've done this in the past with Blog Talk Radio, but now I've moved over to Twitch and going to be starting a series here. And actually I need to be doing some work while I'm talking. I'm sitting here just twiddling around with my pen.
Technology is always advancing.
Yeah. So do you want to go ahead and just tell us a little bit about yourself? I mean, we can discuss how I know you as well.
Sure. Well, we had talked about, what are we going to talk about? And there's so many different things,
right?
The places that we could start that ultimately we'll always end up talking about the same things. The laws of the universe are they're unchangeable. So
right.
we talked about healing. One of the things that I work with people is I work with people who are dealing with really, really difficult issues, very often of trauma and abuse, and but at the same time tending to speak. Well, they're looking for connection with the Creator. They're looking for spiritual insight. They're looking for enlightenment, and of course everybody wants to be spiritual. We just usually. We've started out in life not knowing what we don't know, so we usually have this healing process that we have to get over first. But then we have to ask the question, well, what am I going to do after I'm healed? What would it mean to be healed? But yeah, my name's Demian Gover. I'm the Chief Minister for Peaceful Mountain Way. We're an independent branch of the ONAC, that's the Oklahoma Native American Church. And before people, get any ideas, being a Native American church doesn't have anything to do specifically with ethnicity. That would be kind of bizarre if, it'd be like asking, a Christian if they were Palestinian, like Jesus. But there are methods of connecting with ourselves from a layer that goes beyond culture, that goes beyond history. And we have a lot of respect for the people that have come before us and have showed us a way to explore into our minds. We believe that meditation is one of the more powerful tools that we have to access our inner consciousness. And there's a difficulty with that because we watch people spend years, if not decades, even in diligent daily meditation practice, and they're still not able to set aside their human ego identification long enough to recognize what they truly are. And we call that spirit, for lack of a better word. In English, we can use the word spirit. We can just say the immortal soul when we're translating scriptures or traditions from different religions and in many languages. And the words are limited. The words are very awkward and clumsy. And the words are very often inadequate to describe what we discover when we look inside ourselves. And the methods that we use as a Native American church, specifically, we work with ayahuasca, with the plant medicine. And, so for those who aren't initiated into this language, we're talking about psychedelics.
Oh, yes, we are.
And there's many different psychedelics.
And when you're talking about ayahuasca, you're talking about a different level of psychedelic
compared to many, yeah.
Hey, thank you, Latest Gaming Review. Thank you for the subscription. Thank you so much. I will have those interruptions when people subscribe and stuff. I'm sorry about that, Demian. I just gotta acknowledge those things.
No problem at all.
But when we're talking ayahuasca, we're talking a whole different level of psychedelic. Like even Aubrey Marcus refers to it as a whole different level. And that's a man who's done a lot of psychedelics.
And in our training, we've worked with many other sacraments and many other psychedelics as well. And people who are listening, they might be familiar with things like LSD, and I don't mean experientially necessarily.
Right.
You certainly don't have to, but just in media and in culture, you might have heard of acid, you might have heard of LSD, you might have heard of magic mushrooms, you might have heard of psilocybin, and if you experience these different psychedelics, you will recognize similar psychedelic aspects and similar psychedelic imagery from one to another, but they all have slightly different alkaloids, they have a slightly different chemical structure, and so different medicines and different plant medicines have different uses because they seem to do slightly different things. One of the really neat qualities of ayahuasca is that it seems to have this internal guidance component. And I don't want people to mistake the idea it doesn't do all of the work for you, although there are some really neat neurological things that go on that you don't even have to be aware of. You might not even recognize for weeks or months after a couple of initial ayahuasca sessions.
You can go ahead and keep going. I'm just sitting here. I'm actually kind of laughing because the music is like ramping up epic along with your speech.
Sure. and so one of the things we realize is that ayahuasca, the potential for depth of healing, seems to be much greater with ayahuasca, and I think for many reasons, because there seems to be that internal guidance component. And when I say that, what does that mean? Internal guidance. It means that more often than not, and certainly more often than with other psychedelics, we might have either a direct experience of an encounter with what we might refer to as spiritual entities, and we might have this feeling, this sensation of a presence that has knowledge and information that's useful from our human point of view.
Can you see the chat, Demian?
Oh no, I'm here on my phone, so I'm not looking at it.
Okay, I was going to say if you've got it pulled up on your computer, because just latest game review said thank you for sharing your wisdom, Demian, and you're welcome. Latest game review. They said thank you to me as well.
Certainly.
Oh.
Yeah. If you see anything, if anyone has questions, because I'm not looking at a screen.
Okay, that's fine. I just wasn't sure how you.
But if someone has any questions or anything they'd like to share, feel free to stop me and let me know.
I will for sure.
Because so the majority of the conversation that I'd like to have really doesn't focus on ayahuasca at all. The thing that I want to focus on is the insights that we might learn from working with psychedelics or working with ayahuasca. So we might have a brief
thank you for the bits there, latest.
We might have a brief introduction of what a person might experience encountering entities, and I'm not suggesting that that's part of what is necessary with ayahuasca. Because, like I said, there's experiential things.
I've talked a little bit about my experience. One of my first experiences on here a little bit with some people, and that was
Sure.
a dragon that I met.
Many people encounter things that they interpret as dragons, serpents, snakes.
Yeah. The snakes and the serpents and stuff seem to be an ongoing common theme.
And so why is that? What's the symbolism with the serpent? What's the symbolism with the snake? Because we see it pop up in many different cultures, in many different religions. And
well, I mean,
so
yeah, I mean, it depends. Like in Christianity, you see they talk about snake as being Lucifer, as being Satan, the devil.
And that's a very interesting point.
But you flip
what does
over.
that mean?
But you flip over to something like Hinduism, where they believe in Kundalini energies, and they talk about the Kundalini energies rising up like a snake, intertwining along the spine.
Right.
So
Right.
there, the snake has a positive connotation.
That's actually in biblical scripture as well. People just miss it.
Oh, really? Oh, yeah.
So, 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 in our culture here in the United States, most of the time, when we talk about, the creepy crawlies like the spiders and snakes, those are always a threat, right? And well, I mean, they were a physical threat, all throughout history too. But people recognize snakes can go places where other things can't. And symbolically, that means they have access to knowledge, they have access to information that we might not think we have access to. And so that's why serpents in Chinese mythology, they can fly in the air, they can swim underwater, they can go places where other things can't. Now, of course, the original um, Judeo-Christian mythology is that, and see, they don't say the word ego. They use the symbol of the serpent. They say it's more subtle than other beasts in the field, right? Because you can't see it, because you can't see your own ego.
Right.
And what the ego means is we're not talking about being egotistical or egoism or being full of yourself. That's it's a different thing. When we're just talking about the existence of spirit, just the experience of being human. The sensation is that we're separate from everything. We feel like we have this separate body, this separate mind. Everything in our experience of sense and memory is declaring to us and demanding that we accept the fact that we are separate. I'm me and you're you, and everything else is other. Right? But and so the original myth is that in the beginning we walked with God, we talked with God. Man and God were tight. Human and God, we were together. All right, we were in this together. But then we got it in our heads that we're separate, and that means that all of a sudden everything is an existential threat. And if I'm separate from everything else, the implication is that I'm separate from God.
Right.
And so that then becomes the enemy. This sense of separation, not this demonic evil force, this character, Satan, that is whispering wickedness into our ears. We're creating those wicked thoughts ourselves. Man, today is gonna suck. Oh, that guy deserves this promotion more than I do, so I guess I'm not gonna get this raise. All this negative self-talk that we tell ourselves. That's absolute nonsense, but from our human sense of ego separation, all of these things make perfect sense. So
Right.
we're the ones accidentally, with no information. We don't know what we are. So we're the ones declaring these thoughts in our own mind that don't work, they're limiting, and we don't see a problem with that. We only see the problems when those thoughts that we think reflect back to us problems in our lives. And because of our sense of ego separation, we think these problems are external. We think the pains of life, the suffering of life, the horrors of the world, we truly, truly believe that these things are external of our own consciousness. And that means that we feel powerless against them. And in Judeo-Christian scriptures, it says, if thy eye be single, your body will be filled with light. If your mind is pure, you will recognize that you are a non-material entity. They're talking about the Kundalini serpent awakening. They're talking about raising energy through the chakra system and realizing that you and your father are one. You and your heavenly Father are the same thing.
Right.
This is what the character Yeshua describes, the master metaphysician. And of course, symbolically, if we looked at scriptures in all religions symbolically instead of reading them like it's some kind of history book, we would realize that all of these characters are aspects that we take on ourselves. Wasn't the whole message that Krishna was teaching Arjuna how to be like Krishna, how to have the same mind of God that Krishna had?
Right.
Isn't when we read Judeo-Christian scriptures, isn't Jesus saying the only reason I'm able to tell you these things, the only reason I'm able to perform these miracles is because I accept something about myself that you're not willing to accept? And if you accept these things that I'm telling you the way that I'm telling you, then all of these miracles that I do, you will do, and greater.
So I've got some comments in the chat. It goes back to talking about snakes. Puck said, "I think about infinity with snakes." Um,
Yes. Okay, so this is where fractal mathematics comes in. the What humans do is we learn and grow. We learn and grow from experience. So we have bad things happen to us. And we go through it. We experience pain and suffering. And then we realize that it was our pain and suffering that taught us things that otherwise we wouldn't have known. Then we learn and grow, and we become a different person. And so symbolically, the snake sheds its skin. If the snake doesn't shed its skin, it dies. And if we don't learn and grow, we humans, we die in our sins. Now that sounds like this, scary threat, that Jesus is speaking to us, that God's speaking to us. It's like, okay, you have done something wrong, and therefore you deserve to be punished eternally. This is the condemnation of judgment. But there's, but there is no eternal condemnation. Now, this is where anyone who with a religious background is going to get really bent out of shape, because I'm going to tell you there is no death. There is no eternal condemnation. Nothing in my experience of exploration of consciousness demonstrates that to be true at all. What I have seen is that this is a world without end, and we will continue to learn and grow. We will continue to shed our skin and become a different person. And everything that doesn't work for us, every point of view that we have accepted, every set of beliefs that we've conditioned ourselves with, as soon as we let those go and replace them with a different set of beliefs, a different set of conditioning, every time we do that, we shed our previous skin. There's a lot of religious doctrine that says, oh no, being born again, that's a one-time thing. It's a one-time deal, and some people say that you can lose it and that you can regain it. What I'm suggesting is that it's just ongoing. You learn new things about yourself. You replace old ideas that don't work with new ideas that do. You continually tweak and adjust those things, and you simply outgrow whatever you were before. And you will continue to do this throughout your existence. And as soon as you accept the idea that there is nothing that you could possibly do to be worthy or unworthy of your own divinity, then you outgrow the need for pain and suffering. It's not like that you became worthy of some kind of divine reward. You outgrow the need to go through the education. You outgrow the human classroom.
I love how we get off on just a tangent off of just one little thing. but
you know,
but they're always good.
people, how people want to talk about things, what they're looking for. You know, when I counsel or when I minister, what they're looking for, what they're open to, that determines how deep down the rabbit hole we go.
Oh yeah. So
Because
latest game reviews also said my first psilocybin experience involved the dissolution of the ego. I can't even explain it. I wish I could experience that again.
the desire to chase the dragon. Yeah, chasing the dragon.
So once you got
Um,
it once, you want that again, and you can't ever get it.
because there are different lessons to learn. If you've already learned that one lesson, move on to the next one. You know, the great teacher Alan Watts said, once you've gotten the message, hang up the phone.
That's good.
So let's talk about many people who have visited us that have experienced some significant psychedelic experience. They'll talk about, and because they've read the term ego death in many places, but it seems obvious as soon as they start talking about it, it's obvious they haven't understood it. So ego death, let's talk about ego death for just a second. First of all, it's a little bit of a misnomer, because when we talk about death in our culture, we expect that when we're talking about death, that we mean it's over, it is done, it's final, it's not coming back. And ego death is a temporary experience, either in deep meditation or working with entheogenic sacraments like psilocybin or ayahuasca. And when people say that when they tell me that they've had an ego death experience, and they're like, oh, it was so confusing and so painful, I didn't know who I was, you know, my sense of self was dissolving, I couldn't tell, you know, where I began and the floor began. And
You got Puck at death. She said, "Ooh, death, my favorite topic."
and so what that is it's not exactly what I would call an ego death. I would call that was an ego challenge. And when we work with ayahuasca, I tell people, you know, normally when we do these counseling sessions, just talking, we unfold some of these spiritual ideas at a much slower rate. But when we're working with something like ayahuasca that has the ability to deeply challenge your sense of self, it has the ability to deeply challenge your sense of reality.
Oh
Not every
God, yes, it
time,
does.
but the potential is always there. And so we kind of have to talk about some of these spiritual ideas and what a person might expect, the things that they might run into, so that they have some navigational tools to help them more skillfully and with a little bit more knowledge navigate these ego challenging experiences.
Right.
And when a person experiences sitting in the beingness of blinding white energy, and there is no memory of having been a human, no awareness of being a material being at all, your name doesn't mean anything, your physical body has been set aside momentarily, and any sense of separation at all just doesn't exist.
Ow.
And you're just sitting there in the bliss of that blinding white energy. That is ego death. And it's a bliss that cannot even be can't be comprehended from our human point of view.
Cane Theus said, "What's up, Demian?" Take it that's someone you know.
Who is that talking?
Cane Theus. CANETHIUS.
It very well might be someone I know. Don't recognize the handle.
Yeah, if you want to say what you did. Demi doesn't have chat where he can see it, so I'm reading for him. Puck, if you would like to jump in and get in on the chat with Demian and me, you're more than welcome to jump into the live channel. Puck's one of my mods. I have a feeling Puck's scribbling for a headset.
And it's funny. We're talking about the dissolution of the ego, the death of the ego. Well, first of all, like I said, death, a little bit of a misnomer,
It's not at home at the moment.
Because after you come out, you will come out of that ego death experience. And this is what we want to remind people when working with ayahuasca or 5-MeO DMT or anything, that even if you have enlightening experiences with ayahuasca, revelatory, visionary states, you still have to decide what you're going to do with that.
Yeah, if you don't integrate it somehow, that's just, hey, pretty fun trip, have fun, bye.
What is hilarious, is to hear, someone tell some version of this kind of story. They'll say, oh, so I did, 10 or like 14 dried grams of mushrooms or whatever, and I experienced ego death. I realized that I am one with everything, and those bastards in Washington are trying to prevent us from knowing that. So I have to go out and tell everybody. And I'm like, wait. Because anyone who knows me knows I'm very hand-holdy in my explanations of things. I don't throw anything in people's faces, but I'm kind of like, wait, stop, take a breath, back up a second. What other people? The people that you said you just realized that you are one with? Well, yeah, but they don't know that. I'm like, wait, back up. You're one with existence, right? You and your Father are one. You realize, oh yeah, I realized that was what Jesus was talking about. I and my Father are one, but my Father is greater than I. That's the power. That's the one single power behind everything. That's what gives me the ability to experience, the horrors of the world, so that I can overcome them, But I need to make sure that everybody else knows this. And I'm like, do you know it? Because the way you're talking,
I just gotta ask. It
doesn't sound like you're convinced.
I just gotta ask.
That's all I'm saying.
I just gotta ask, with all the ceremonies and stuff that you've been with people through, as you sat with them as a medicine man. How many times do you have to stop someone from going off and doing something crazy during a ceremony?
That's what the preparations are for. And I realized that some of the ways that we were trained in the very beginning were to help people manage those really difficult energies in the middle of ceremony, when they come up. And I have had people beg me to let them strip naked and run out into the woods.
No.
And of course they are very appreciative when I talk them down from that. But in the moment they're like, oh no, those, everyone out there, they'll understand. I'm like, no, they won't.
You're gonna get shot.
We understand. They'll call the cops.
You're gonna get tased someplace you don't want to be tased, okay? You think getting naked and running through the middle of the street's a great idea on your psilocybin or your ayahuasca trip? You might want to reconsider.
Right. Like I said, they're very appreciative when I talk them out of it. But in the moment, some people are, they're very, because they've let down a lot of their ego guard. They've let down a lot of their ego illusions.
Right.
So they're not feeling this intense sense of separation and all of these things of shame and, of acknowledgement and awareness of threats and, and all of those types of things. So as someone who is administering ayahuasca, you have to be there to guard the gates of threat against them in many different levels. Both both the physical levels of threat that someone can put themselves into. This is what it means to hold space for people, but also the psychological threats as well.
Caintheus wants to know: have you ever had to stop an orgy?
Sometimes people can have the tendency to want to get handsy, and we remind people that this is why the admonition to avoid sexual thought, not because it's a shameful thing, but guys, when you're on vacation and you're going to a motel or something, you're going to the beach, and and you're gonna meet new people, and you're gonna hook up with something. That's what that's for. That is not what this is for. You're gonna meet people in these groups who've been traumatized. They've been molested by people they trusted. They have a background of
you have
very
people
confusing sexual issues.
You have people that are healing from all kinds of different issues. You got
exactly,
and not just sexual issues. You've got all kinds of mental abuse, abandonment issues, everything. And some people, are there just looking for deeper enlightenment.
But while it may be flattering to people in a group, then like, oh, they're paying attention to me, and because I'm under the influence of this powerful psychedelic, it feels spiritual. Guys, if you're going to experience some kind of spiritual tantric sexuality, you want to be very, very lucid for that. Ayahuasca and psychedelics put you in a very impressionable state of mind, which when it comes to sex becomes very quickly deeply confusing.
Hey, all I gotta say is, if you've never had ayahuasca, like, there can be some really weird imagery and stuff on ayahuasca. Some of it could be extremely feminine, some of it could be extremely masculine. There can be all kinds of crazy imagery on ayahuasca.
Yeah. Okay, let's get real. I'm sorry, go ahead.
But one thing that comes down to it is, with this medicine, you do have what's called a purge phase. If you ever thought about, wanting to get frisky after you've just, had your head in a bucket for the last 20 minutes?
Yeah. Yeah. And even in those states, let's get real for a second. Yes, people can have very sensual or very sexual feelings that feel orgasmic during their journeys, but that's for you. That's for an inner state.
Right.
And that's for you to experience and to process. We can talk about it, like mature adults afterwards, but that experience is for the individual. And when the ego lets itself down, and you start having all that free love hippie kind of feelings, and we're like, oh, why can't we just all make love to each other and blah blah blah. And I'm like, and I appreciate the spiritual sentiment. Yes, we're all one. Let's all make love, not war. But the sexual act is not. I can't stress this enough. Sexuality is not for ayahuasca experiences. It's not for group spiritual experiences. So that's why the admonition against sexual intercourse and sexual orgasm leading into ceremony, because people are dealing with a wide number of sexual issues. So that's one of those things that you have to let people know right up front. That's just right off the table.
Yeah. Well, and especially like in the sense of the setting that you're in. I mean, with the church and everything, that can't even be an option.
No, not even a consideration.
I mean, that crosses too many ethical boundaries,
yeah.
the those just can't even be remotely crossed in that manner. And
And sometimes people have gotten a little testy at us because we're reminding, hey, you know, please don't insinuate yourself into someone else's personal space.
right,
We need to leave everyone alone so that they can have their own personal journey. You can send energy, you can send mental and psychological and emotional energy, you can send prayers to other people for their healing. We can't police people's thoughts. If I'm not going to tell you it's okay to have sexual thoughts about someone else, but that's not my place. It's only my
right,
place to keep people safe, and and remind them to focus on their own inner journey.
right.
And yeah, it's off the table completely. And yeah, it's off the table completely. But that doesn't mean that the issue doesn't come up. Sexuality and sexual intercourse, sexual orgasm are one of God's gifts that come closest to spiritual ecstasy. But we have to be we have to find a way to be very mature and very responsible with these gifts that we're given, or we will very quickly misunderstand what they're for and very quickly misuse them.
Right.
So let's
This has been one of the easiest nights I've ever had of interviewing anyone ever.
Well, anybody who knows me knows I like to rattle on like a paint can. You can point me in any direction and I'll just go.
Let's see. Um, yeah, so that's got us all caught up on questions. So anyone got a question for Demian? You guys want to point him in a new direction and see where he ends up?
So let's talk about. Okay, so we've done our introduction with ayahuasca and psychedelics. Let's go in the direction of the principles that we're working with, and what does it mean to heal?
Right. Okay.
All right, guys, listen. Everyone has problems. Everyone has experienced pain. We're born into a world experiencing this dichotomy of pleasure and pain. We would really like to experience more pleasure and experience less pain, and we judge the pain. This is where we get into trouble really quickly because we judge our pain. No one comforts us. No one explains to us what it's there for. So pretty much across the board, humans, we experience pain and we immediately misinterpret it as emotional trauma. And that's where all of our existential angst comes from, because we experience this pain and suffering, this frustration and disappointment, and we say, this is bad, it's wrong, and it shouldn't be happening. And yet it has happened, and we refuse to accept it. We're always looking for who to blame. We're always looking for who or what is at fault. And after we've extinguished our anger at ourselves and at the people who hurt us, we might start pointing that anger toward God. Remember, we feel that we're separate. So I'm separate from the people who hurt me. I'm separate from the power that could liberate me.
And that's the ego speaking in there that's keeping you in that separation.
That is the ego sense of separation. Remember, scripturally, this is the enemy. But not in the sense that it's a personified thinking being that is out to get us. There's
Right.
nothing in existence that is out to hurt us or out to punish us or to oppress us. I'm sorry, guys, we're doing that all on our own. It's accidental. It's infinitely forgivable, but in the meantime, it's going to hurt until we figure that out. And people were like, but I was born with a congenital disorder, nothing that I did in my lifetime. I didn't choose any of this. And yes, I understand. No, we didn't choose any of this on purpose. No, we didn't want any of this. All of these awful things in the world, the greed and the corruption, the violence and the poverty, and all the people in our lives, those people that we should have been able to trust, and they betrayed us. We didn't want any of that. We didn't choose any of that. But we inherited mental and emotional misunderstandings that prevented us from seeing through it. And so we had to experience it. The reason you are not already healed is because there are things of which your mind is capable of doing, which you have not yet done. Let me repeat that once more for everybody in the back. The reason you are not already healed is because there are things of which your mind is capable of, which you have not yet done. And the reason you've not already done these things is because you don't believe you can. Perhaps you don't yet know that you can.
Gigi Puck asked, how do you know if ayahuasca is right for you?
It's a calling. People hear about it, people contemplate it sometimes for years before they visit us or before they visit someone. And I encourage people to seek education however they feel led. Whatever feels right, whatever the risks are worth it to you, whatever feels safe to you, I encourage people to seek that out however they feel led. You really don't. You don't know if ayahuasca is right for you, because what ayahuasca is going to do is challenge who you think you are. It's going to challenge your world. It's going to challenge what you think you're capable of. And it would be probably ideal if we had a chance to work with people for 3 years and teach them deep meditation. That would be ideal. But I'm going to tell you something. I work with people every day who contact me and they say, dude, I'm at the end of my rope. I have exhausted all the traditional institutions. My parents have let me down. My family's let me down. My school has let me down. My doctors have let me down. My therapist has let me down. The preachers have let me down. And if I don't get some relief soon, I'm going to end it. And I say, okay, I understand. But before we go there, let's consider some options. Let's consider what your options are. Let's consider what you're working with. Because I can't promise that things won't continue to hurt. But I can promise that if you follow it to its logical conclusion, if you trust your heart and follow where your pain leads you, and instead of wishing it away, instead of looking at the depression and looking at the anxiety as the enemy, instead of wishing these things away and just I wish someone would just make it better. Let's take a deep breath and sit down with our depression. Let's sit down with our anxiety. Ask it what it's there for. Ask it, okay, and this is one of the things that we have to try to accept from our human point of view, because when we first hear this, for some people it's a wake up. For some people it's like, oh, you mean I can learn something from my past? I can learn something from my traumas? Nobody ever told me that before. But then there's sometimes when people are like, fuck you. How dare you tell me that my traumas are useful? And I'm a
Right.
pretty good. I'm a pretty good counselor. I'm.
You there?
Yeah, yeah. Sometimes get a little choked up thinking about people. Um, some people would say that I've helped them a lot, and so when I start talking to people, I don't get that fuck you come back very often. I don't get that how dare you tell me that I could learn something from my traumas, because I have a tendency of putting things in a way that breaks down these really big, overwhelming concepts, and I can kind of break it into bite-sized chunks where people can kind of understand things a little bit at a time, and then we keep revisiting those ideas, and then we're able to put them together so that we make the small concepts into bigger concepts, and the more trivial concepts into more meaningful concepts. So I don't get that a whole lot, but I know I know that if we were just to come right out of the gate and say that all of your pain and suffering is a lesson for your own mind, especially when they figure out, oh, I put that there. If I was to just tell somebody that, they, without a little build up, um, there's some people who would latch onto that and they'd never let go, and they would very quickly learn how to heal themselves. And there's
Right.
other people who would just, that would immediately reject it. And so we have to start out slowly when we're introducing these things to people. When I was young, and I mean very young, um, I thought, oh, there's all these problems in the world, and if people just knew the answers, then that would fix the problem.
Right.
How naive that is. Because then, oh yeah, go through a few decades of pain and suffering, and you realize, and then I look back, and I think, how many times did I come across the answers? How many times did I hear somebody express some version of this understanding, and I rejected it? I ignored it. I resisted it. So believe me when I say I understand that just hearing truth, um, it does. We don't immediately recognize it as truth.
Right.
I get that very well. And what I try to do instead for the people that I work with is I try to very, very patiently, very gently, very slowly explain things that in a way that I would have understood, 20 years ago.
Right.
So I'm 45 now, but my 35-year-old self wouldn't have understood this.
Oh no. I'm
It
not
was
much.
really, it was about 8 years ago
I'm
for
not much
me.
younger than you, and a younger me wouldn't have understood a lot of this stuff.
See, I was always I've been studying my entire life. Read the Bible in 3 different translations before I finished high school. Couldn't make any of it work for me. Asked questions, preachers couldn't explain it to me. I
Yep.
mean, I heard what they said, but none of it made any sense. It was full of contradictions and paradoxes, and just and now I recognize, well, they couldn't explain it to me because they didn't know themselves. They were using a lot of the right language.
But just
A lot
not
of
right in
this,
the, but not in the right context.
no, not the right discernment, not the right interpretation.
Right.
Because they thought they were describing a history book to me. They thought they were describing a rule book to me. They didn't realize that they were trying to use words that came from a book about symbolism. And all the scriptures in all the world's major religions are written in code. And of course, they appear to be very different because they come from different languages in different cultures across time and space.
Right.
And so even though they're pointing at exactly the same objects, the language is different. So therefore the symbols are very often different. Sometimes the symbols are very different. They're so different as to almost be unrecognizable. And if you don't have a key to interpret those symbols, you won't know how to interpret scriptures, which are a metaphysical instruction manual that describes very clearly what you're capable of doing with your own mind. And it describes that you were born into the world not knowing these things. So it is in no way your fault that you've not already done them. Anyone can learn them. In fact, the way that we learn is almost entirely a process of unlearning what doesn't work.
So, well, we tried that. Nope, not going there again.
And yet we do. We're like a dog returning to its vomit. So we do these things, with our mind. We make commitments to our emotions. We make commitments to our fear and our anger and our pain and our sadness and our jealousy. And we make commitments to our frustration and our worry and our doubt. And we think, well, this isn't working. Maybe if I doubt harder, maybe if I worry more, maybe that'll do it. Maybe I'm not blaming the right people. Well, maybe I ought to get on Facebook and see who's really to blame. That's it. I'll get on Facebook and I'll argue about politics. That'll fix everything.
So someone's feeling a little called out here right now. I know you see my political post.
We can talk about politics and we can talk about social justice and we can talk about social issues. And what we should be talking about is how do we support the people who feel victimized?
Right.
Because there's some people that feel powerless and they don't know what they're capable of. And explaining to them where the source of their power is not going to help. What they really need is they need support. They need to know that they're not alone. They need to know that not everybody in the world is bigoted against them.
Right.
Like I said, there's different. Everybody's in a different place. Everybody's in a different place on their own spiritual journey, whether they know it or not. But it's kind of only so much of a range of places that people can be. But we have all had different experiences of life, and so we're all processing things through a very unique filter.
Right.
And what that means is that as we get started exploring ourselves, and this is whether through meditation or through working with entheogenic sacraments like ayahuasca, or through just trying things out in our world, whether we're working with a therapist or a doctor or somebody who's trying to help us understand ourselves spiritually and psychologically, the changes that we're going to experience, eventually we're all going to come to the same thing. But for each individual, that process is going to look completely different.
Right.
Because what's going to come up, what's going to be brought up, and that we have to face and deal with and make some kind of sense out of, is going to come to us in a completely different order from everybody else.
Yeah, it's not going to play out the same.
And so we shouldn't expect that, if this one method works for one person, well, that's going to work for everyone. And it's just not. the tools that we're working with are all the same, the mental and emotional tools. Everything
Right.
that we think we're looking for, when we find it, we might discover that we already had it. We're not going to add anything new to ourselves. Although it's going to feel like we're picking up new information. It's going to feel like we're picking up new knowledge. And if that manifests as some form of spiritual insight, it feels like it's new. But really it was already there in our consciousness, and we had other things that were not true getting in our way. How are we looking on time? What's the...
We are just at an hour. We can go as long as you want to. I mean, that's the thing with this. I don't have any time limit like we did before.
Well, let's talk about some of those mental and emotional tools.
Okay.
So, because so we've done kind of the setup, the perspective that we're looking at. Okay, what's the setup? Okay, you're born into a world not knowing what you truly are, not knowing what you're capable of. None of that was your fault. But if you want to change it, you have to take complete and total personal responsibility for it. And you can't do that in the past. There's mental things that you can do to help put your own past in perspective, but you can't take responsibility for anything in the past. You can only take responsibility for things in the present moment, and you can only take responsibility for them from your current level of awareness. So what are we aware of? We're afraid. Can't tell you how many people I've heard say, "Oh, no, it's not fear. I'm not afraid of anything. I'm angry." Oh, yeah? What's anger mean? Have anything to do with that you don't know what's going to happen next, or that you expect that something you don't like is going to happen next? That sounds an awful lot like fear.
You're right.
Because fear is the expectation that whatever happens next is something you're not going to like. And so it turns out that fear is the negative emotion that makes all other negative emotions possible. You can't be angry or jealous or sad without being afraid, without having some sense of uncertainty about what's going to happen next. But fear comes from someplace too. Fear comes from ignorance.
Yeah.
Fear comes from ignorance of the self. It's not that you don't know things about other people. It's not that you don't know how the world works. It's that you don't know how you work. I don't know how I work. And if I did, then I could rearrange my thinking. I could rearrange my mind just like I rearrange my furniture in my house. If I don't like my furniture, what do? I go out and get new furniture. But then I bring it in and I look at, around, and I'm like, I don't like the flow in here. This isn't working for me. So I rearrange it.
All right.
The same's true of your thoughts. Oh, I don't like these thoughts. Well, get new thoughts. Throw the old ones out. Yeah, I know. Easier said than done. But guys, that's the only way it works.
I was going to say, right there's the conversation. People are probably like, okay, well, let's have that one. How do you throw these thoughts out?
Well, first of all, you have to be willing to admit that you're thinking these thoughts, or that you're feeling these feelings that aren't working for you. And the vast majority of what we believe it doesn't have anything to do with our belief systems at all. People can say, oh, I believe in God, and I believe in Jesus, and I believe in this and that, and I believe in healing, I believe in all of this. And then you look at the way they live their lives, and you're like, it's pretty obvious they don't believe any of that. What they believe is that they're scared, that they're not worthy, that they're not capable, that they're limited in many ways. And the truth is, subconsciously, we're carrying around a multitude of subconscious beliefs that we're not even aware of. And we don't have to unpack all of those subconscious beliefs. There's probably a good handful, a fairly small number of major beliefs that support all of those other beliefs. And if we admitted those things to ourselves and we brought them to the surface and said, okay, yeah, when I look in the mirror and I expect that things are going to go wrong, even though I say I want them to go right, I'm still afraid that they won't. And that's a function
Right.
of my subconscious beliefs. And so if I hold these beliefs up and I say, do I think this is true? Do I really believe my beliefs? And a lot of times we'll say, no, I absolutely don't believe these beliefs. Sometimes we do, but sometimes we disagree with our own subconscious. But see, the subconscious doesn't care because it's programmed. It's a habit. And if we don't know what our habits are, how would we change them?
Right.
So we might take the time to write down what we actually believe. I'm scared. I'm angry. I believe that I'm not worth that promotion. I believe that I'm not good relationship material. How many times have you heard people say that?
Oh yeah.
And so you keep getting in one lousy relationship after another. Practically the same person, just with a different face. And if we admitted that we have these beliefs and we said, you know what, I don't believe the beliefs that I have. So what do you believe?
Hey, Demian, Puck's got a question.
Certainly.
She says, I have a weird question. When I go into an antique shop and I get vibes off of some things, what is that?
Could be in any number of things. Depends on what the vibes are. Are you connected to something that is a reflection of your ancestors? Was it something that someone in your immediate family ancestry had some kind of recognition of? Because if you don't have cells of recognition from your current human point of view, and you see something and you just you get lit up by it, maybe that's something you inherited. I don't want to get too spooky or woo or
I think that's what
like
she's
it's
wanting you to do.
I know that, but I'm not going to go there. Uh, uh, because it's don't worry, it's probably not a cursed object. Probably. But it may be something that sparks some creative interest in your mind because somewhere in your immediate ancestry, um, it was something that meant something to them. I think that's as simple as I would explain that, and as far with the um, as far with taking your personal history out of it as I would want to go. Because the thing is, even if you could trace, even if you found records of your grandparents and they had pictures of themselves with an object like this, um, it's still affecting you in the moment now.
You're right.
It's not affecting you in the past somehow. It's affecting you now. So you really have to answer for yourself as an individual. What does this mean to me? What's it pointing me to? Usually when something is wakes up our attention, whether it's pain or pleasure or something just interesting, it is one part of our mind trying to get another part of our mind to pay attention. Now, understand, I don't mean to imply that these are separate parts of mind. I'm saying we have one mind that has different functions.
Puck said, "Ooh, I always thought it was like energy of a person who used to own it, but maybe that's true too."
Here's the thing: where does energy come from? This is what I'm getting at. Energy does not come from without and affect you. Energy is 100% projected from within, and your material world is just a mirror that reflects that energy back to you. Now, when you don't know that, the world is scary and it's a scary and confusing place. When you do know that, you realize that the mirror of the material world is completely and totally incapable of reflecting back to me anything that I'm not willing to show it first. Ooh. So what have I been projecting? What have I been projecting that I didn't know I was projecting? I did this accidentally. I did this subconsciously. It's almost as if we're making two different kinds of choices. We're making choices that we're conscious of, that we're aware of, but then we're making repetitive choices. We're making this repetitive commitment to habit, to programming. Sometimes I like to call them accidental choices. It's almost like they're not choices at all, but it's a part of our mind that is repeating a pattern because it's subconsciously programmed. I'm like, well, crap, well, how do I get out of that? How do I program myself with something new? Well, first of all, you don't have to know everything that's in your subconscious, just the major things, the major beliefs, the principles that are supporting your current misunderstandings, the things that tell me I'm limited, that I'm not worth it, that I can't do it, that I'm not wanted, that I'm not loved. All that bullshit. All those garbage beliefs that have been making my life suck. And so I dig down deep and I think, okay, well, what would I replace these beliefs with? Well, you know, how about we just start with the exact opposite of what hasn't been working for us? That I am worthy, that I am wanted. If I
King,
try, I can do it.
King, King Vicious said, "I laugh at the traps that are set for me, but I laugh harder when I fall for it."
Oh, oh, the ego traps. Sometimes the stuff that tells us that, well, if I don't know it, then maybe it's not knowable.
Right.
And if somebody else says that they know it, well, they must be wrong because I've tried, I've looked, and I haven't found it yet. Yeah, yeah,
Right.
I get it. I get it because I've been there. I understand. Just be patient with yourself.
He says, or they might be right.
And see, we hear truth spoken about us all the time. And sometimes the people who are speaking the truth, they don't even know how right they are because there's something in about it that speaks to them, but they haven't quite internalized it yet. They don't quite believe it. So they're saying the nice bumper stickers, but they haven't done it. So they haven't demonstrated to us any kind of useful, practical method for how to do it. So that's the method that we're talking about right now. Admit what our beliefs are, pull those beliefs to the surface, proclaim the opposite. And you're like, but I feel so silly because you're telling me that I have to declare that I have this comfort, that I have this love, that I have this enthusiasm, that I have this passion, and I don't.
Right.
Well, if you keep telling yourself, you never will. Actually, you will eventually, but it's just taking the long way around. And so, yes, in the beginning, I get it. You feel like you're lying to yourself. But it's just like getting behind the wheel of a car and you've got, someone teaching you and you don't know how any of this works. It's overwhelming. And so you're given instruction. This is what this tool does. This is what this lever does. This is what this knob does. Now coordinate all of those things together, and you're like, yeah, right. It feels like too much sometimes.
Right.
But you have to be able to put yourself in the mind of a master. You have to be able to imagine that you have this skill.
Cane Theus says, wait, one more lap. I'm not ready to be free of suffering.
Yes. Yes. And guys, no one's going to talk you out of your misery. Heaven will never be inflicted on you.
Well, that's like what we was talking about the other day, that some people get so identified in their suffering and their pain and their sickness or their dis-ease that
Yes.
that becomes their identity, and the whole idea of doing anything that would remove that identity from them is just foreign to them.
Right, because
They
we
they
don't
want
know who
they
we are
want to
outside of our traumas,
they
right?
want to be healed. They want to be healthy. They'll talk about that, but they don't want to do anything to make it happen.
Because they don't know what that would look like.
And I can admit I'm guilty of that myself.
And that's okay. I try to remind people, that there is no moral failing in this. We want to be supportive and encouraging of each other as we figure these things out. And part of that is reminding each other, you don't have to do anything. You don't have to heal yourself to impress me. I'm not going to get my feelings hurt. If you hold on to your current identity, but let's just consider the possibility that my identity is flexible. Maybe my identity is choosable. Is that possible?
Right.
Is it possible for me to change my identity, not because of something happening to me, but because of me choosing something? And some of these things I may be able to do in large amounts at a time. Some of these things I might have to do incrementally, a little bit at a time.
Right.
Baby steps. That's okay too. But the thing that we do is if we commit ourselves to the idea that I can change my identity, well, that changes my experience of life. It changes the meaning behind the past. It might not immediately change what happened to me in the past. It just changes what it means.
Right.
I don't have to dishonor the past. I don't have to make myself so vulnerable that I leave myself open to new threats. In fact, making myself vulnerable lets me let go of the fear of threats.
Yep.
And that's a difficult place to get started with at first, but I promise at first it will be difficult. It's difficult in the beginning.
And this is just the beginning, folks.
It's always difficult in the beginning. Just don't give up. Never, ever, ever give up. Here in Kentucky, we say, be like I-75 and never stop working on yourself.
Actually heard Joey say that not too long ago.
He lives where I live.
Yeah, I know. I know. I've been trying to get him to come up here.
Uh, it's hard to do when you got two young kids.
He's saying that him and Sandy might try to get away and come up one weekend.
Yeah, yeah,
I told
great people,
I,
absolutely great people.
I told him I'm either gonna have to
Sandy,
kid.
Sandy and Joey.
I said I'd have to either kid proof the place, or he said they'd probably find a babysitter. It'd probably be easier.
Yeah, yeah, and that that is helpful. Is surrounding yourself with people that mean something to you. Surround yourself with supportive people.
Oh yeah.
Surround yourself with people who are already committed to doing that work on themselves.
Oh yeah.
We might realize that one of the things that's kind of in our way that feels like an obstacle is we've surrounded ourselves with people who are committed to their own limitations, and so they're going to continue to point out our limitations to us.
Right, because they can't see beyond theirs, so they want to hold us to the same limitations they hold themselves to.
And the very idea of us talking about, that we want to change those identities of myself, well, that starts to make them very uncomfortable. Where does that leave them?
Right.
So one of the things that we one of the things that we learned through scriptures is that one of the first rules of manifesting is secrecy. We have to keep these things to ourselves. We don't describe our healing process to our friends and family when we know they're not on board with it.
Right. Because
We
they're
just
just
make these changes,
because
and
they're
now we
just
demonstrate.
they're just gonna shoot it down. They're going to belittle it.
Yeah, yeah. Unfortunately,
Trust me, I know that because of my experiences with my own family. Cane Theist is like yes, like Inception the movie.
yeah,
You know,
yeah.
I've never actually watched Inception.
It's interesting. It was different than what I thought it would be. But a lot of these movies like that, they point to what we're capable of doing with our mind. And of course, in a lot of movies like that, and movies like The Matrix and things like that, of course, it's all couched in technology.
Right.
We can do these things with our mind through technology. And in many ways, a lot of technology manifests because of what we've done through mind. But guys, the thing is, this is what I want to remind everyone, that every single thing that ever manifests in the material world, it began in mind. And if you can say to yourself, it began in my mind, then that means I can change it in my mind. As soon as I stop making certain subconscious commitments and allow myself to commit myself to something else, then my experience of the world changes.
Cane Theist went on to say the more that you alter the dream, the angrier they get.
Here's the thing: the more you wish that the dream was altered, the more frustrated and disappointed you're going to be, because wishing doesn't make it happen. Okay, so this is where the spiritual teaching comes in. You're staring into a mirror, right? And you're experiencing pain. So you're frowning at the mirror, a lot of the time, right? And so you're
Right.
looking in the mirror, and the first thing that you do is you think this is a different person, and you think they're frowning at you. And so I want everyone, go to a mirror. This is an exercise. You can do this yourself. A lot of a lot of the stunts I have to say, don't try this at home. This one you can try at home. Go stand in front of your bathroom mirror, frown at the mirror, and I want you to use your mind to wish and hope and beg and plead for that mirror to change its expression. How long do you think you're going to spend on that exercise?
Longer than we're gonna be on this show.
if you think that's the way you're going to change what you see in the material world, you're gonna that it's gonna take you're gonna be there a long, long time. So, what do we do? Well, if I want to change what I see in the mirror, I have to figure out how to change my expression. But still, I'm doing it mentally. I'm making a choice, right? I'm making a mental decision.
Yeah, I
Well,
mean,
but so my wishing, my hoping, my begging, and my pleading, I thought that that was making a mental decision. Turns out it wasn't.
see, I've always been told that the only thing that you can control is yourself, your actions, your thoughts, your
That is 100% correct. Now,
just
what does
you.
that mean? What does it mean? What is yourself? What is yourself? And A, what is yourself? What am I? And B, how do I control it? And
Well,
C, what would it take for me to master it?
well, there's the true trick: is the mastering versus just control.
First, you have to figure out what works and what doesn't work, and you have to practice what works, right?
Right.
And practice, what do they say? Perfect practice yields
Practice makes
perfect
perfect.
results.
Right.
So, so if you practice correctly, if you practice correct mental thinking, the correct creation of new ideas, the correct accepting and rejection of ideas, that's thinking, that's control. That's me controlling myself.
Right.
So when I'm staring into the mirror and I change the expression on my face, well, that was, oh no, that wasn't a mental thing. That was a physical thing, right? No, you still had to make the decision. You still had to make the mental decision to control the expression on your face.
Well,
But
yeah.
so before you changed the physical expression on your face, because remember, it's only the expression on your face that allows the mirror to change. Before you changed the expression on your face, you made a decision in mind to stop waiting for the mirror to show you something new, and you made a mental choice to express something new from within.
Right.
This is what we're capable of. This is what everyone is capable of. This is your God given right and your God given ability. What you might not have at any given time is the knowledge of how to do it. But if you accept the idea
Canthius
that your beliefs
says
can change,
the logos.
yeah, yeah, the word. Logos in Greek was translated into the word in the first book of John in Judeo Christian scriptures. I don't mean to. I don't want people to think that to get the idea that I'm stuck on Judeo-Christian scriptures. It's just in our culture that's what most people are kind of have a Sunday school familiarity with. If we were talking from a Buddhist perspective or a Hindu perspective, we talk about those scriptures. But in the first book of John, it says, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God." Greek logos is translated into the Word in English. What is the Word? Thought. Organization of thought. Remember, it's just like I rearranged the furniture in my living room. I rearranged the thoughts in my mind, and my experience of the world changes. I'm not adding anything new. I'm not taking anything away. The alpha and the omega are already there. I'm just rearranging my thought patterns. In the beginning, what was that? Wait, where was the beginning? Was it 6,000 years ago? Was it 15,000 years ago? Oh, are we starting with Adam? Are we starting with when, guys,
Canthius says
time,
yes. This is a better explanation than Bible school.
time does not mean anything to God. Yeshua says, let the dead bury their dead. Let the past take care of itself. And he says, don't worry about what's going to happen tomorrow, how you're going to feed yourself and how you clothe yourself. Don't worry about it. We weren't meant to worry. Today's worries are sufficient unto themselves. So Yeshua is saying, just like all of the other Eastern mystics, remember, they're all saying the same thing. They're just using very different symbols and very different language to describe the same thing. They're saying time and space don't mean anything to spirit.
Go back to the word that you used there, mystic. There's
Ah,
there's a lot of people that I don't think get the true understanding of what that word really means.
if something is mystifying, it's almost indescribable. It's so difficult to use words to describe. But the mystic who has organized his thinking can work with the mystery of existence, the things you can't see. And the mystic understands that you start with the world of the things you can't see, the kingdom of heaven, and you rearrange, you allow yourself to rearrange your current thinking in alignment with the perfect conception in the heavenly realm. Because, guys, heaven is perfect. If it wasn't perfect, it wouldn't be heaven. Why are you not experiencing it? Because you don't believe it. Period. Do
I
you think
think
that if you're a good little boy or girl, that if you wait when you die, that then you'll be judged and then you'll be allowed to go to heaven, or you'll be condemned for all eternity in hell? It's ridiculous. That's absurd.
yeah. Well, I mean, it's like it's like that teaching the other day that you had me listen to with Neville Goddard. Was that
Yeah,
his name?
yeah,
Yeah. I mean, he basically got down to he was talking about the identification of oneself as I am,
yes.
and what I am means is the name of God, but he was also getting into the point that um, as in each individual, we are I am. Um, I am is us and resides in us, and the separation of the two cannot be made.
In the Psalms, it says, "Be still and know I am God."
Right.
Jesus says, Yeshua says, "I am the way, the truth, and the life. Nothing gets to the Father but through me."
Right.
So, and Yeshua is repeating over and over and over, if you would take on the mind of God, you'd have to put my words in your mouth. And so many people who claim they're religious, they've been taught wrong.
Keynesius wants to know if we can talk about stillness.
Be still. Be still and know that I'm God. Our mind is perturbed. That organization of our mind, we're we're thrashing around in the dark, being afraid of nothing that's there. In Judeo-Christian scriptures, symbols. Remember, we're talking about symbols. And peace, that feeling that you would really like to have, that feeling of peace, it's symbolized by a dove. So, what would you have to do to allow this dove of peace to find a place to rest on you? If you wanted a bird to settle on your shoulder, what would you have to do?
It'd have to be still.
You'd have to be still. Symbolically, stillness of body, but actually, stillness of mind. We're,
It's
we're
what they
talking
talk.
about meditation.
Right. It's what they talk about, like when a Buddhist says to find your center.
Yes, yes, exactly. Lao Tzu in the Tao Te Ching, from the Taoist perspective, says always return to the center.
Yep. It's that calmness within oneself.
If your eye is single, your body will be filled with light. You'll recognize that you're not a material being at all, but you are actually 100% spirit, having a material experience where you're living in a physical body, and you have been gifted with an intellect, you have a mind and a rich emotional world and capabilities, and you didn't know what you were doing with them. And so you're thrashing around, the mud's getting all stirred up, and you're looking down in the mud trying to find where the thread is. And so you're constantly moving, constantly having opinions, constantly projecting judgments, constantly moving around hoping to avoid this non-existent threat. And if you would just be still, if you would just let your mind be still and practice not having opinions about the thoughts that pop into your head, then that mud would settle in the waters of infinite consciousness that would cleanse you if you would allow them to. And when the mud settles, you see things as they actually are, which is both infinite and safe. You'll realize there was never any threat. You'll still experience pain. You'll still see the horrors of the world. Like Yeshua says, the poor you will always have with you. There will always be greed and corruption. There will always be violence and poverty. But you have the right to decide what you participate in. Are you going to be angry about those institutions in the world that seem to be agents of corruption and greed? Because Yeshua says, resist not evil. No, it's what you do for the people who are struggling. He says, what you do to the least among you, you did to me first. Well, remember, if we put Yeshua's words in our mouth, what I do to other people is simply reflected back to me.
Right.
This is where the golden rule comes from. Do unto others as you would
As you would
have them
have them
do
do unto you. Right.
unto you. That is it. And the rabbinical scholars will say that's it. That's because this is expressed in the Old Testament as well. The Hebrews knew this, at least the prophets did. Many of the Hebrew people themselves didn't seem to, they were still using carved household idols like the Canaanites and the Egyptians. But the prophets, the Hebrew
Right.
prophets, they knew this. You don't do to someone else what you wouldn't want them to do to you. And that's it. That's the whole law. That is the whole of the law and the prophets, and everything else is just commentary.
There you have it, folks.
And I just want to say, I hope it helps. If anything we've talked about here, I don't speak to try to be confusing. I know we talk about concepts and ideas that are sometimes new to people. We talk about scriptures and we talk about religion in a way that people aren't used to talking about. And I hope it's not confusing. I hope it makes things a little more clear. And I think I hope that it introduces people to a way of thinking about things and a way of doing things that is different than what they thought and is helpful.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I've always wanted with the whole breaking reality show was was something to where we could challenge people's perceptions of um the world around them and give them a way of looking at things differently
Yeah.
and not just staying stuck in their own perspective per se.
Guys, when you heard the truth, when you realized the truth, did you think that it was going to justify your current opinions?
Well, that's what a lot of people want the truth to be. They want it to justify their current opinions, their current beliefs, and to say their, what they were taught growing up.
Yeah,
This is the
yeah.
way my parents were raised. This is the way they raised me. So blah blah blah. I'm gonna
Grandma taught it and we bought it.
right. So this has got to be the way it is.
Healing doesn't work that way.
Yeah, I mean,
It,
I started looking for something different early on too. Like I was in my teens and going, just this what they're teaching at my parents' church just isn't really cutting it. So there's got to be
yeah,
something more.
yeah. See, they've got all the right words. The words are there.
Oh well, they know how to
They
they
just
know
don't
how to
they just don't know what they mean.
they know how to use the words to invoke emotion and all that stuff. They know how to get the responses by putting the words together in the right way to evoke an emotional response.
And those are good promises. Some of them are kind of bigoted and racist
Well,
and a little
yeah,
sexist, and, but some of them are good promises.
but that's all they say is promises as long as they're just these fancy words put together with no
They don't deliver.
right. I mean, and that's like kind of earlier what we was touching on just a little bit. Like I said, you can go and have a profound psychedelic experience with, psilocybin or peyote or ayahuasca or DMT or, you
But it doesn't
know,
do all the work for you.
5-MeO or whatever it is. You can go and have this most profound experience. You can see these beautiful visions. You can, walk through the kingdom of heaven. Walk alongside God. You can, speak with Gaia, whatever it is that you go through,
Yeah,
unless you bring that knowledge back and integrate it into your day to day life, it was nothing but a bunch of pretty images.
yeah, yeah. I think some people think that they're supposed to integrate their spiritual self into their physical self, and that's ridiculous. You are your spiritual self already.
You're
No
just your spiritual
integration of
you're
spirit is necessary.
you're just your spiritual self having a physical existence.
And so what you can integrate are the ideas.
Yeah.
You integrate the the beliefs, the knowledge, the reorganization of ideas in your mind. And
What
just
do you
once
mean it's
again,
just the chalkboard, Cantheus? Like psychedelics are just the chalkboard, or like when we was talking about that, or what are you hinting at there? Sorry.
we'll see if there's a response.
Yeah, I was kind of
Like I said, I can't see it.
symbols are tools of learning. Yeah, symbols are definitely tools of learning for sure.
Yes, yes. And the symbols point at things that we can do with our mind. They point to things that we can understand. And if we'll be really, really honest with ourselves, we're not adding or taking away anything truly. We're remembering. We're remembering what Spirit already knows. And one of the ways Neville Goddard, for example, is really good at explaining these things in plain and direct language. Your current conception of yourself is equal to your current conception of God, and vice versa. Your current conception of God is equal to your current conception of yourself. And that means that if you think you're a lowly worm, that you're a wretched sinner and not deserving of anything, that you are the one putting the parameters on what God can do in your life.
All right.
Because you believe that God is separate from you and that God has opinions and that God has an agenda, that God somehow has a plan and I'm not part of it.
Cantheus says, but people out here thinking Job really got fucked by Satan.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So everyone forgets that Job admitted it himself. Job said, and this is the line that everyone forgets in the book of Job: that which I feared the most has befallen me. In that allegory, God and the devil are personified, and those are completely and totally aspects of one undivided consciousness. And if we'll even look at the allegory, we'll see God and the devil aren't fighting. They're practically playing a game. I mean, this
Right.
this sounds horrifying from our human point of view. Oh, that God is so callous; he just lets the devil play games with me. But remember, this is allegory. These are personified characters. Job says it himself: "That which I feared the most has befallen me." If you're not familiar with the book of Job, Job was a wealthy guy, had huge family, huge farm. He was the guy who had everything, and he was very, very grateful for it. It says very clearly that he loved God, that worshipped God, and in the end, because of his continued faith, everything that he lost, he got back and then some. But how did it all start to fall apart from him? It wasn't because there were these omnipotent characters outside of his own consciousness making a bet over him. This is allegory. This is symbolic. Remember, the devil is my own sense of separation. It's my own ego. It's the part of me that believes that I have something to gain or that I have something to lose. It's the part of me that doesn't know that I already have everything through that one infinite power that's behind everything. In English, we tend to call it God. And it's a singular power. And that power, just like it says in scripture, that power tends to get jealous when we attribute power to anything else besides it. So when we go to work and we say, "Oh, this asshole made me so mad,"
You're
and
attributing power to that guy instead
God's
of
like, well, wait a minute, where do you think your source of supply is? Does
right.
it does it come from that guy? Is that guy, that mirror image of yourself? You think he has power over you? You think that he can affect your emotions? And you're like, "Well, yeah, I do."
Only if you choose to give it to him, though.
Or if you're unaware, if you're uninitiated into the mysteries. And this is what it means to be a mystic, is that you're aware, that you're initiated into the mysteries. You know that you're looking into a mirror. But the mirror is still reflecting back to you the appearance of ego separation. But the
Cantheus,
mystic recognizes that it's just an illusion. They see through it.
Cantheus wants to know what is initiation, and I think what they're talking about is initiation as a mystic.
Well, first of all, initiation is not joining some social club and they say, "Well, if you, here we're going to give you a lecture, and then we're going to give you a quiz, and if you pass the quiz, then we'll allow you to be in our club." That's
But
not
you
what
gotta learn
initiation
the
means.
secret handshake.
Yeah, if you wear the right clothes, put the bumper sticker on your car. That way we know who you are. Yeah, no, it doesn't have anything to do with that. Initiation
If you
means
send
that you're aware.
$29.99,
Yeah.
and,
Your
and
secret
all the
decoder
mysteries
ring
and all the mysteries
will
of the world will be unlocked to you.
your secret decoder ring will show up in your mailbox.
Yes.
Don't forget to drink your Ovaltine. Initiation means that you wake up. Initiation means that you're aware. Initiation means that you can look
Cantheus,
at things differently.
before we get too all serious in this, Cantheus says I came for handshakes and butt sex, but all I got was this crappy awareness.
Oh,
Uh,
too true, too true.
that needs to be a bump.
Awareness.
That needs to be a bumper sticker.
I'm sure it is. Here's the thing, brother. Don't forget anything that you imagine. It exists somewhere. So be very careful what you use your imagination with. See, it seems to be that humans, as far as we know, they seem to be the only creatures that have the ability to be this gateway between relative levels of unawareness and relative levels of awareness. It's not like this either or thing, like you're either unaware or you are aware. There's it's grades. A rock is relatively unaware even though it contains
Right.
all of the information of the universe. Plants, a little bit less unaware that plants have the ability to move toward water and away from toxins. They tend to physically move in the direction of the sun, but still can't have a very good two-way conversation with them. Animals, even less unaware, but they still are not able to move past the level of instinctual feeling. As far as we know, humans are the only ones that have this ability to self-reflect and wake up from the illusion of separation.
Right.
Humans have the ability to do that. But even when you wake up to it, you don't immediately, it's like you said, we were talking about earlier, when we have enlightening experiences in meditation or revealing visionary journeys with ayahuasca or psychedelics, that does not immediately confer onto us all of those useful personality traits and
Not at all.
emotional skills that you can then interact with your world in a different way. That takes discipline. And unfortunately, because we've experienced discipline from other channels that didn't know what discipline was for, we think that discipline is a four-letter word, and we avoid it
Right.
at all costs. We avoid the very thing that would set us free, which is disciplining our mind, disciplining our emotions, trying new ideas, seeing what the consequences of those new applications are, and then have the maturity to accept the results. And then the insight to tweak and adjust what we're projecting. We have the right to adjust our discipline, knowing that what we discipline ourselves with is going to get us different results. We're the snake, continually shedding its skin, continually being a new person. And symbolically, you don't put new wine in old bottles. You don't put new patches on old clothes. Put new wine in new bottles. Put new patches on new. Well, what do you need the patches for? Just get new clothes. You don't like your furniture? Toss it out. Get new furniture. Well, I can't afford it. Well, not with that attitude, you can't. The burning lake of fire. Remember, John the Baptist said, I baptize you with water. Again, this is symbolic. The ancients considered water to be cleansing, it's a symbol.
Right.
If you think that going out to the creek and dunking your head over while the pastor says, do you reject Satan and all his works? If you think that's somehow, does something to you without it accompanying a change in your heart, you don't need to go out to the creek. You need to go within the closet of your mind.
Right.
Water is a symbol and it's cleansing. What does it cleanse you of? Well, John the Baptist says, I baptize you with water, but I'm just preparing the way for someone who's going to baptize you in fire and the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit is movement. It's the actual material consequences of choice.
Right.
So you make spiritual choices and they have material consequences. And that burning lake of fire was never intended for people. There are no souls burning in hell in damnation for suffering for all eternity. That's absurd. The burning lake of fire was for your ideas that don't work. And why do you burn them in an eternal lake of fire? So that the wheat is separated from the chaff?
Get rid
So
of
I
them.
don't come back.
Yep.
Jesus says if you cast out a demon, if you drop a bad habit and you don't replace it with something angelic, well, that demon's going to come back and is going to bring 7 of its friends.
Yeah.
The eternal lake of fire was for ideas that do not serve you. They're for thoughts that don't work, beliefs that don't work, subconscious attitudes and habits that are making your life worse.
Did he answer your question there, Canthius? Canthius says he's always wondered what that meant. Yes.
Oh yes, the burning eternal lake of fire, the threat that we grew up with in church and in Sunday school. And see, this is we're told that we deserve this. We deserve this because of our original sin, our original misunderstanding. We ate from the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and therefore, in our arrogance, we thought that we had the right to judge good and evil. We thought that we had the right to say where God messed up. And we say, well, if I had done it, I would have done it differently.
Right.
These things that God made, well, they shouldn't be here because they're brutal and they're painful, because they hurt. And because I disapprove of it, I think God messed up. And I think God would agree with me. And God's just looking down saying, I created everything. In Scripture it says, I, the Lord thy God, I create the light and the darkness. I make peace and create evil. I, the Lord, do all of these things. Remember, it all comes from one single place. So God's just saying, I created everything. It's good. And I love 100% of it unconditionally.
Right.
And so, all of the mystics, all the prophets, all the sages, and the yogis, they're all saying, if you were to, what would you have to do if you were to take on the mind of God? Well, you would have to say, I created all of this.
Right.
And I love it all unconditionally. So if I judge things, I will be judged by the exact same standard that I judge others, because I'm looking into a mathematically perfect mirror 100% of the time. And people will say, stop, no, wait a minute. No, I'm not judging anything. I actually saw these awful people do these awful things. You don't understand. These awful people did these awful things to me. I'm not judging anything. I'm accurately identifying it. So surely God will understand that. I'm not judging anything. I know that these awful people did these awful things. Okay, that's fine. No one will talk you out of that opinion. Hold on to that opinion. See what happens. No one will ever take that away from you until you get so tired of holding on to it that you will purposefully dig it deep out of the darkness of yourself, and you will cast it into that burning lake of fire, because I guarantee you no one's going to do it for you. Heaven will never be inflicted on you. No one will ever take away your right to suffer. No one will ever take away your choice to choose your opinions of condemnation. So hell will never be inflicted on you either. It will always be something that you repeat as an accidental subconscious choice. Remember when I say it's an accidental subconscious habit,
Right.
it's hard to think of that as a choice at all. That's why it's forgivable. Because you're not choosing hell on purpose. You're just unaware that you're in heaven. Sometimes I like to tell people that's what heaven really is. What is hell? Hell is being in heaven and not knowing it.
There you go.
Yeshua says the kingdom of heaven is at hand. I mean, guys, to me, that this is not a coming attractions marquee. This is now showing.
Yeah.
So the scriptures that you read that are actually reflecting your own mind back to you, because you're the one who put it there. You also put your misunderstanding there. You're putting your understanding there as well. You're choosing your new understanding.
Well, I mean, it talks about the kingdom of heaven is within. We find it within.
100%.
We find it within, not without.
The Apostle Paul says, do you not know that Christ is within you?
Right.
This is not a person. It is completely and
Right.
totally irrelevant
And
whether...
if you really look at the words of Christ, he says, I go before you to go and make a home for you.
If it wasn't true, I wouldn't have told you.
Right. So if he's going before you and he is within you, then where is that home that he is setting up?
It's waiting there as soon as you choose it.
Within.
Within.
Not without. It's not a physical,
So in other words, what the scriptures in Yeshua's voice is saying is that if you want to experience heaven for all eternity, you have to choose it right now. In this moment.
Cantheus said I would be in heaven if it weren't for all these sinners around me.
Oh, yes. Yes. Oh, isn't that like the Patriots who love America so much? I mean, America would be a great place if for all the damn Americans in it.
Yeah.
Sorry, don't mean to pick on that. Hypocrisy is as hypocrisy does. Notice that in scriptures, Yeshua is he's pretty chill. The only time he ever gets bent out of shape about anything ever is when he is pointing out that religious leaders, people who ought to know better, are teaching God wrong.
Yeah.
He says, you Pharisees, you hypocrites, you teachers of the law, you're preventing people from entering the kingdom.
He did get pretty pissed off at the money changers in the temple too.
That was who was that? That was the religious leaders. Yeah. I mean, they were selling doves. And it's practically the same as for sacrifices. It's practically the same as the Catholic tradition of indulgences.
Or the televangelist guys saying, send me,
we'll pray for you.
Just send me
you can't do it yourself.
Send me $29.99. I'll pray for your eternal soul.
I believe in giving. I believe in giving to the church. Our church, we don't request tithes.
No.
We don't sell goods or services, but we ask a minimum, suggested offering. And it is a love offering. If people can't afford it, I encourage people. Don't let someone as crass as money get in the way of your healing.
Right.
We try to do some pro bono work. We have to keep the lights on somehow. If we were independently wealthy, I'd do this for free. But I'll tell you something. When people don't make some kind of financial commitment to it, it seems like they don't value it. Because I spend a lot of time on the phones, working with people and scheduling, and I say, just show up. When you're back on your feet, when things are going well in your life, if you want to make a donation to the church, have at it, brother. But and then they don't show up,
right?
Because they don't value it. and no one values what they don't know about until after it's done something for them. So I understand people are taking things on on faith, but I hope that we're able to provide some information to help people make more informed choices.
Yeah, I mean, are you talking about as far as the use of sacraments and working through the church, or are you talking just overall the
Well,
conversation tonight?
that's from my point of view. That's what I try to do because I like I said, I work with people. For some people, money really isn't an issue.
Right.
Some people are doing very, very well for themselves financially, but their relationships are falling apart because they've been through horrible, just horrifying childhood trauma.
Yeah.
So they're all of the outward appearances of their life may be going great for them, but inwardly they're struggling because they're miserable.
Right.
And
I'm struggling a little
it's
bit tonight myself, but that's because I'm dealing with some fibromyalgia issues.
I understand. I understand. And pain isn't something that we just turn on and off. It's
No, I
something that we
wish
have to
I
sit
wish I
down with
could.
and understand.
Yeah, I've got an understanding to some of my pain and stuff, and how I need to work with it. It's just a lot to comprehend and work with.
All of our pain, all of the, we're born with diseases, every injury and accident, every every pain, physical and emotional, is pointing out to us. It's part of our mind trying to wake up another part of our mind that some way that we've organized our mind isn't working. And it takes a discipline and understanding of what we could use to reorganize and rearrange our mind. And it is no fault of our own that we haven't already done that. It is no moral failing that we haven't already done what we didn't know how to do. And
Right.
yet, so many people are going through life saying, "Oh, I know my pain and my suffering. It's because I'm unworthy. You know, uh, either I've done something so awful, or people have done something awful to me, and therefore I'm tainted." I'm like, "Oh my God,
Cane
who put these ideas in your head?"
Theus asked, "Can physical healing happen through the mind?"
Physical healing only ever happens through the mind. You can go to your doctor, and you can have, many people visit us because they've gone to doctors and they've been over medicated and nothing worked. But you can go to the doctor and you can get effective prescriptions. You can have effective surgery.
It's not
But
like faith
I
healers.
guarantee you, I guarantee you, if you don't change your attitudes, your emotional attitudes, the moods that you cultivate, even if your surgeries and your medications are effective, something else is going to happen, or that issue is going to come right back up.
Cane Theus is asking like faith healers, and I do believe there are some people who can have that miraculous style of healing.
They can, they can, but it is not because they have the faith in the healing. It's because they have allowed greater and greater feelings of peace to settle upon them. And anyone who's in that presence has it's infectious.
Um,
It,
Demian, we talk about healing and stuff within the church and stuff, and helping
certainly.
people heal and being healers and stuff. And for those of you who don't know, I'm actually in the process of working on becoming ordained in the church and stuff. So I'm following a similar path. And one of the things that we talk about is we don't heal other people.
No,
What we
no.
do as a healer is we lead them to the healing that is within themselves and show them how they can heal themselves, the healing powers that are within themselves, so they can unlock them and start their own healing. We can't heal them, you know.
But what we do is we cultivate and we discipline that faith and that peace within ourselves so that when other people come into our presence, it makes it possible for them to have that kind of faith and that kind of peace in themselves.
Right.
If you don't have the faith and the peace in yourself, how are you going to give it to somebody else?
Right.
It was the Greek philosopher Horace who said, you can't give someone else what you yourself don't have. Imagine that.
Canthea said, "What do the stories of Jesus healing mean?"
The healing was a demonstration, and he said so. He said this is a demonstration. His message was not that sickness is a bad thing and that everyone needs to be healed. If that was true, then he would have continued to walk the earth forever. So he started out healing and preaching, and people caught on to this. Okay, let's just talk history for just a second. And let's imagine. So, put yourself in the mind 2,000 years ago and imagine that the story is historically true. So what was going on? Jesus was going from town to town, and people were hearing about this miracle worker, this holy man, and they're like, I want to be in his presence because I'm suffering and I want healed. So the people who tended to flock around Yeshua were people who were pretty heavy of heart, and you notice that when people came up to him, he would say, "What do you want?" And they said, "Well, make us clean, make me healed, make me whole." And the second thing that Yeshua said was, "Do you believe that I can do this?" Now, when he went to Nazareth, when he went back to his hometown, everyone started making fun of it. There were people
Um,
who
r-
legitimately wanted healing. He had to take them outside the town. He had to get them away from the non-believers. He he had to take them away from the dream killers
right.
to get them
there's another
in a place
question
with.
here I want to get in there
Sure,
too, so you can make sure you get it.
sure.
Cantheus also said, "Can we do these demonstrations that seem miraculous?"
I see it all the time. I see it almost every day. The only reason you haven't already done it is because you don't really believe it. And I don't say that to throw it in your face or make and or to say, oh, this is really your responsibility, because I can't do it because I've already done it. I've healed myself and I found that peace in my heart. And my mission is not to go around impressing people with my ability to do things. I want people to impress themselves. And that's why after a little while, Jesus said, okay, I've made the demonstration. I've shown you what is capable of happening. Now I have to go back to preaching. Now I've got to spread the word. That is me going about my Father's business. And he tells the disciples, when he educates them, he teaches them his method. And when they're ready, he says, okay, I'm sending you out like sheep among the wolves. And these miracles that you have seen me do, there will be a day that you do, and greater works than these you will do. I once heard a preacher, he actually had some insights going on. He said that there's the story about Peter. After Jesus was crucified, Peter had a habit of going to the temple to pray every day. And people would come who were sick, and where people had to touch Jesus. They had to ask him to pray for them. Well, they just went, and they just wanted to be in Peter's presence, because Peter had been in the presence of the Christ. So they knew that Peter had some of this Christ-like peace on him. They wanted to just sit in Peter's shadow as he walked by, and then they would be healed. Greater works than these. Greater works than Jesus. Because the only limit of it is what you can imagine. What does it take to heal? Do you have to go to church and make a donation and get somebody to lay hands on you?
No, that's how you make someone else rich.
So how about the person that you see who has healed themselves? How about you go to the mystic and beg them to teach you how they did it? How about that?
Ah, your guru.
Oh, but it's so hard to find someone who actually walks the walk as well as talk the talk. It's real easy to find people who speak well.
Right.
It's really difficult to find people who have actually changed their lives in a way that you would like to change your life.
The perfect example of that is, have you seen the Umbrella Academy on Netflix?
I'm aware of it. I haven't seen it.
Second season, the character Klaus starts up a cult,
Oh,
and
cults.
and he's telling these people, like, and it's funny, like his whole thing is like, uh, his whole cult is based off of lyrics of songs, like pop songs. The one of them is "Don't go chasing waterfalls, stick to the rivers and the lakes that you're used to."
Hey, makes perfect sense.
But yeah, I mean, it's one of those. Oh, look, uh, I'm gonna give you all these good vibes and these good feelings and all this good jive and this good jazz and stuff. But the Klaus character is just a train wreck. Like behind the scenes, like when he gets away
Right,
from like the cult people who are
right.
like worshiping him, he's just a total complete train wreck.
You know what they say, never meet your heroes, right?
Yeah,
because when you see what they're actually, what how they actually live their lives, oh, it's nothing like you thought it would be.
right.
I don't know exactly what people think of me personally. I really don't care. I mean, really don't care. Like, couldn't care less. But I know that I'm making a demonstration. I'm setting an example. So while I don't really care what other people think about me, I care very much what I project.
Right.
Not because I I care about what people say about me, or whether I impress anyone,
But it's what you want
but
to put out there. It's that
it's
energy and
what
that
I want to
awareness
put.
that
I
you want
want
to
to
put
show
out there.
people what they're capable of. I want to show them that you can come from absolute poverty. I grew up poor. My um, wasn't my parents' fault. It was just the 70s.
Right.
And so we didn't. I grew up in the 80s, and we didn't have you know cable TV and air conditioning and running water and things like that.
I remember my parents put a central air into the house after I moved out, and I was like, "You guys waited until after I moved out
Yeah,
to put this in."
yeah, yeah. And now some of us, we feel like we can't do without these things, and yet
Oh
there's so
yeah,
many people in the world that still don't have these things,
oh yeah. Like
and we're not.
I remember just not too long ago being like, "Oh my god, if it wasn't for my central air, I'd be dead." Now, in my house, that might be true because I have very few windows, and most of them I can't open because they've been painted shut.
Do you know when and we still remember this. My kids, they will never grow up like this. The world's got a completely different set of problems. The problems just change. Problems will always be there. But
Right.
when we grew up, we saw the newspaper list how many people died, and they were usually either elderly or children,
Yeah.
how many people died from heat exposure
Oh yeah. Yeah.
because they didn't have air conditioning. Air conditioning wasn't the ubiquitous thing that it's become.
Oh
Now
yeah.
it's become like an essential. Back when we were growing up, it was a luxury, and we didn't have it.
Cathia says we solve our problems so our kids can solve new ones. Isn't that the truth?
Yeah, yeah. But what we have accidentally passed on to our kids is the perspective that we have to continually fight the problems. What we're not passing on to our kids that we could be passing on is that facing the direction of intuitively and creatively accepting answers from our own higher mind would immediately and obviously solve all the problems. But see,
Right.
we're looking out into the world and we're waiting for someone else to do it first.
Right.
How long are we going to wait for that? Well, the politicians have to. Why do we have to fight? Why can't we all just get along? And why can't we the why can't we just support each other instead of pointing out everyone who we believe is at fault, and we think, oh, our guy is going to fix everything.
I
Look at
mean,
what
yeah.
our guy has done.
Yeah.
Well, our guys are just maintaining the status quo.
Yeah.
If we're going to change anything in our lives, we have to start with ourselves. And that means starting with our own thinking. And that will then it will manifest in how we treat others. Guys, we could create heaven on earth if we allowed it, but we won't allow it.
How long you wanting to go tonight, Demian? We're at 2 hours and 17 minutes.
Brother, we've talked everybody into a coma,
I think we have
I
to.
think.
Let's go ahead and call it there. We will set up for a next night. Um, I think you said you was good to go every other week. If that's schedule
that
still good.
that sounds good. I
Okay,
like that.
so not next Monday, but the following Monday at 7.
Let me take a look at my schedule. Let me
Okay.
make sure that that's available. But yeah, that sounds good now. We probably won't. We had a lot of introductory stuff to get through this time. If we want people to get the introductory stuff, just send them this link. You get them caught up.
Okay.
We could probably talk about some other issues in a little a shorter time frame.
Well, what I'm gonna do is I have to do a 24-hour wait period because I'm affiliate with Twitch.
Sure.
On any content, and then I can put this up on YouTube, and I can get the YouTube link out there for everyone too.
Right.
Um,
And if you would like, you're welcome to share it on our Facebook group.
okay. Cainthius, thank you for being here. He says, thanks for the invite, Demian. Cainthius, there's a subscribe button if you'd
I
like to
got that was
subscribe.
canon. Eventually, I
Okay.
didn't say, but I figured out who that was.
Okay.
Yeah. Love you, brother.
There's a, subscribe button if you want to subscribe to the channel. Probably going to be doing mainly this kind of content. I'm going to be getting away from doing a lot of the gaming stuff. So most of my content's going to be coming along this line. He says, it's a me, a Mario. And so yeah, but we'll get this up and going. We'll get into some new content and stuff.
We'll talk
And
about the game of life.
oh yes, yes,
It's a game worth playing.
yes, it is.
Tell you
Oh,
what. Why don't we go? Why don't we go ahead and tentatively, unless something else comes up, let's talk about that. Let's talk
Okay.
about how life is a game and how we could play it.
Awesome. Awesome. That will be the game of life.
Wonderful.
Will be the next.
Well, well, brother, it has been a pleasure
It is always a
speaking with you
pleasure.
this evening.
This was the easiest interview night I've ever had. I pretty much just said put you on, and I just looked at the camera funny most of the night. And I'm just like, I don't even have to really say anything. I just point the man in a direction and let him go.
I am in in uh, in what comes out of my mouth. I am wound very tight.
Well, you're just you're
In
just
everything else in my heart, I'm loose as a goose.
you're just this wealth of knowledge, and there's so much.
Oh no, I just wanted answers, brother. I wanted answers and I wanted them bad, and so I just read everything,
Right.
and I couldn't get any satisfaction until I figured out how to look within myself. And it was hard, it was brutal at times, but I guarantee you it's worth it.
Uh, uh, Kathia said yes, me too. But all
All
right, at
right.
that,
Well,
uh,
until next time,
yeah, at that, let's go ahead and call the stream. And thank you so much, Demian, for being here. And everybody, thanks for coming out.
peace be with you.